Alright. Hello, everyone. How are you all doing today? I myself am doing rather well. Coming at you once again with another Stargirl review. This time doing episode 4, of course. Now, I want to say, ultimately, I was still generally satisfied with this episode, and would still recommend the series overall, even though this has got to be the weakest episode so far for me, and it's not really from any dip in writing or anything of some such. It's that the worst elements of the show, the teenage superheroing, is put in the forefront, while the best element, Pat, is kind of pushed back to the back of the episode. And I'll get into that as we go along. So, first, I'd like to thank you for joining me. If this is your first time checking out my channel, thank you. If you enjoy my content, why not subscribe? Or if that may be too much of a commitment for you, why not hit the like button at the very least? With that out of the way, let's get into it. The episode, of course, starts with a flashback, this time taking place 3 months ago, where we follow Yolanda, and she is just the pinnacle of perfection at the start of the episode. She's got all the grades, she's a sports boxing champion, from what I gather, or at least heavily into boxing in some way, shape, or form. She's running for the student body elections, and of course, she's in the lead. She is also dating the football bully kid from earlier, the son of Brainwave. So, student elections are going on. She's in the lead once again. It's during this that we get to see the true evil of the cheerleader in full-on villain mode, as she steals some nudes that Yolanda had sent for her then boyfriend. And what evil cheerleader does with them is really quite vile, I would say. During the final round of campaigning in an auditorium filled with people, evil cheerleader puts up the stolen nudes in front of everyone. Now, she sends all of these directly to everybody's phones. I don't know how she does this. I don't know exactly what her capabilities are at this point, but it is clear that she's going to be a super villainess for sure at some point in the future. So now we understand why Yolanda has been called a slut for the last 3 episodes, and we get to see and start getting an understanding of what her character arc will generally be throughout the series. Now, my only real problem with all this is generally ham-fisted it is, but I'm willing to accept it at this point of the episode. Unfortunately, I do lose my interest in Yolanda's character as the episode goes on. Although, now that's not to say this isn't a horrible thing to happen to a person or anything, because it is, but the problem that this causes for Yolanda are absolute excommunication from the community and almost universal hate from her peers. The level of ridicule this girl gets should be getting to her, so it should be pushing her to the brink of suicidal thoughts, and maybe it's just the actor, but she doesn't really come off more than mopey throughout the episode. It doesn't really seem like this character has gone through 3 months of harassment. It doesn't. She. Because another way to take this character arc is as well, she could have become very combative against everybody, but she's neither combative or really downtrodden. So I don't have a clear understanding of what her character is supposed to be, or the real ramifications of this act that happened to her. I really feel that it should lean more one way or another. Yolanda doesn't really act or speak like she's gone through any of the stuff we were just told she went through. To me, Yolanda doesn't really come across as the girl who was publicly humiliated. Once again, these are two things with this girl that don't mix. One minute Yolanda is cowering in the corner, and the next she's this tough as nails person, which is just off-putting. Either all this is getting to her and she should be on a downward spiral that Courtney can save her from, or Yolanda should be taking all the harassment in stride, which inspires Courtney to see a girl who should be a superhero. Not this weird amalgamation of these two ideas. But continuing on, back at home, Courtney is looking at all these objects of power, and we come across another problem with this series going forward. There really is no particular reason these kids are being chosen. They are just convenient. They're just a convenient choice for Courtney to make. Oh, this person's genuinely good. Let me give them a superpower. Anyone can be gifted any of the superpowered objects at any time, and as long as they're a decent person, they can do some general good with them. In the next scene, we get a breakfast conversation where Courtney is told that she can invite a friend over for dinner, but sadly, she doesn't really have any. We go over the death of Joey once more, the magician kid who died last episode, and how Courtney wants to bring more people into a fight she really should be taking a step back from, honestly, even if it's just for a moment. She was teary last episode, but immediately she launches into this idea of getting more kids into this. I mean, a kid has died and her only thought is to bring in more kids because she's looking through a yearbook at this point to find potential candidates who could die if they aren't prepared properly. Some more looking down on Pat as well. It's really getting grating, but it's kept to a minimum at this episode. We only get one example of it, so it's nothing to be too concerned about, but we should be moving away from that by now, I feel. Because Pat is my favorite character after all. Before we leave to school, though, we get a not-so-subtle hint that Yolanda is a boxer. I would have preferred if this was hinted at earlier in the series, like maybe she had her gloves at her side in an episode prior, but I guess better late than never. Back at school, evil cheerleader spots Yolanda, and Henry, Yolanda's ex-boyfriend, son of Brainwave, and current boyfriend to evil cheerleader, bump into one another. Henry is still upset over what has happened to his father. He blows off evil cheerleader, and this sets off evil cheerleader, who starts bullying Yolanda once more, but it doesn't take long for Courtney to step in, which I do like. We've gotten so few heroic acts from her. It's quite a nice thing to see. I can't say much against it or for it. This should be generally happening with a hero. Evil cheerleader leans in and whispers, "You'll never see me coming," to Courtney, and it's actually done quite well. This girl is just having a blast playing a villain, and we have Courtney by herself in the hallway until she runs after Yolanda. Yolanda tells off Courtney because she wants to be left alone. Again, we get this mixture of a spineless in the face of a villain and then temperamental when someone tries to come and help her. At least we get a Pat scene right after where he's picking out car parts in a junkyard. It's a quick scene, nothing much happens, it just shows that he visits a junkyard. The scene is really there for one quick joke, I don't mind that. it was cut out of the CW version as well. Pat drives back to his garage with his new loot and finds that the widow is having car issues. She explains she had woken up in a very empty house. I'll remind you that this character just last episode lost both her husband and her son. She had tried to go for a drive when her call stalled, unfortunately. So she is then taken to his garage by a tow truck. The line delivery is a bit awkward for me, but then I wouldn't know how it could have been done any better, except for her taking another second or two to compose herself before explaining what had happened. Pat tries to console her a bit, but unfortunately the widow wants to distract herself from this topic, so she goes for a walk to end the conversation quickly. Another jump cut later, after which we join Icicle as he visits Dr. Ito in their lair. A man with these disturbing reptilian features, like he blinks with two sets of eyelids, and they make it clear how he blinks too. You see the one eyelid close and then his normal ones go down. It's very uncanny, I would say, to say the least. They explain some more of the group's history, and disturbingly, during this, Dr. Ito asks for the magician's body, the senator who died last episode, the husband of the widow. Dr. Ito says he is incredibly loyal to Icicle, but we generally know how these things go down with villains, so he might get away at the end of this season to be the main villain of the next season. Tension does build as Icicle tells Dr. Ito that they are now speeding up their plans, which we don't have a full understanding of yet, but we're getting there. And that's how that Dr. Ito now has permission to build a machine that is vital to the operation. These villains really do mean business, and they are interesting to boot. And it's so sad. I cry at the fact that these heroes, the new JSA, are 100 years too early to be taking these villains on. It'll be absolute bullshit when the time comes for the heroes to defeat the villains, no matter how much training they go through, because these guys really are a threat. After biting back my tears, I see that we are following Courtney. I guess she's just walking around randomly in the locker rooms for whatever reason, because she reacts to Yolanda punching a punching bag kind of like she didn't expect it. So Courtney didn't really seem like she was looking for her, but okay, I guess. The story has got to move along. Courtney tries to invite Yolanda over for dinner, but Yolanda is reluctant to accept because, frankly, Courtney has been a bit of a creep to her. But despite this, Yolanda is kind of desperate for human interaction, so she does go home and tries to ask her mother for permission to go over to Courtney's place, but we find out that Yolanda's family has put this girl on total lockdown since her nudes were leaked, which is bullshit, really. She's not allowed a phone, she must come home practically immediately, and she is to stay in her room while she's home, only coming down to eat dinner. Again, this girl really should be portrayed as either more beaten down than she comes across or more combative. No idea if it's a failure in the writing or if it's the actress. Maybe she isn't capable of properly portraying a girl who has been living with 3 months of shame and harassment. But a minute-long scene passes next. Courtney is going over an old yearbook where she discovers Yolanda and Henry's old relationship. She uses this as her in with Yolanda. The next time she sees her, and we get an emotional scene that finally gets these two girls to grow closer to each other. Not bad, I'd say, honestly. No complaints here for the general tone of the scene. I do have to mention, though, that in the CW version, the scene was shaved down a bit, so we miss out on a few lines like Courtney asking, wanna see how I blew up his car. That one made me chuckle when I saw it in my second viewing in the DC version. Now, he being Henry, of course, following Pat once again at his garage, the widow comes to warn him about the leaders in the community as she makes her way for the hills. This poor woman can't stand her home anymore and has to get out of this place. The writing once again makes me feel so bad for a minor character. I mean, the widow hasn't had more than 10 minutes of screen time, possibly not even 5. God, why can't we have more of this writing with Courtney and her crew? Anyways, back at home, Courtney is showing off the cosmic staff to Yolanda and explains the full situation. There may be a possible hint here that the kids in Blue Valley don't actually learn about the original JSA. Yolanda seems confused by the name Starman and is kind of scared when Courtney says that she herself is a superhero. But then again, it may just be Yolanda. Anyways, this is where the episode starts to get dragged down because of how oopsie doopsie cutesy it gets. Now, I will admit, I did smile here and there at Stargirl's excitement, but it's not enough to save these scenes. We find out that Wildcat's costume is filled with nanomachines that help form-fit the costume to the wearer, as well as aid with balance and agility to give the wearer more abilities of a cat. I have to admit, while the bodysuit is fine, the mask really needs to be taken back to the drawing board. It looks awful. Oh my god, you've all seen the pictures, I hope, by this time. If not, you've had time to watch the episode. We get another oopsie doopsie montage where they test out all the abilities, and it all is so oopsie doopsie. It's weird how that phrase perfectly describes what's going on. After all the funsies are over, though, Yolanda and Courtney catch Henry on his way to visit his father in the hospital. It's here that Yolanda gets the idea to steal the visitor's log. This is well reasoned, I would say. The villains must of course be visiting Brainwave while he's out of the commission. It's not too much of a reach. It is logical, and they were just talking about the villains before Yolanda thought of this, so it wasn't out of thin air. They do consider for a moment as well that it's possible that the villains have thought of this and aren't daring leaving a trail so obvious behind. But it's still worth following up on. The girls do make their way to the hospital, where to get inside, shenanigans go down. Now, I don't mean to come across as things like this should be more realistic or anything like that. I'm not opposed to superhero shows being wacky and cartoony, but the way it's written is once again, and I'm sorry for repeating it, very oopsie doopsie. I mean, at one point, Yolanda is falling because she lost her grip while she was climbing up the side of the side of a building, and she's screaming at the top of her lungs, scraping the side of the building with her claws to catch herself, and all of this goes unnoticed. No lights turn on in the hospital. The guard who walks outside isn't coming to check on the noise. He has a little lunchbox. Either he's going on break or he's leaving for the day. It all gets to a point of silliness that is just stupid. Within all the silliness, though, we do get the best joke of the episode. When a nurse walks into a storage room and it's been ransacked, and all she says is, "Robert." Like, damn, what has this guy done to earn that kind of reputation? Once the hijinks are squared away, we see the weird cartoon girl show back up from earlier episodes. The one who Skypes her parents during lunch at school. Well, she's brought dinner for her mother in the middle of the night or maybe late afternoon, and we find out that this girl is just seriously starved for parental attention. Her father is away on the road most of the time, and her mother, being a doctor, must not have any free time for her daughter. In this one scene, they take this cartoon character and brought her down to an understandable level, although she is still generally weird and quirky. Back with Yolanda, she has just entered Brainwave's room and find that Henry is still in there. Now, I'll remind you that at this point of the story, Yolanda still thinks that it was Henry who spread her nudes, so it's kind of understandable that she might want to take back revenge on this guy, but for Brack's sake, she pulls out her claws that we have seen cut through metal, and she prepares to strike Henry with them. These things can easily lop off the guy's head, and she's about to use them on an innocent man to boot. Mind you, he is still a jerk, but that doesn't change the fact that he hasn't really done anything besides be an asshole. He's still innocent. Thankfully, we avoid Yolanda becoming a murderer when conveniently Henry tries speaking to his father, telling him that he, of course, misses him. Yolanda accidentally makes some noise as she tries to get away, but quickly hides when Henry turns his head around, and Henry decides to leave his father for the moment. Stargirl then arrives at Brainwave's window, but these girls aren't done yet. They have to hide once again when their principal shows up to Brainwave's room. So now we know for sure that she is another villain on top of it. She strangely plays a melody on a violin for him, and again, I have to reason with myself that maybe the entire building is just soundproofed, because there is no way that no one would complain about a freaking violin getting played in the middle of the night. I just facepalmed a bit. Anyways, the girls are done with their adventure for the night, with the revelation that their principal is also a villain, verified by the fact that the principal did not leave her name on the visitor's log. On that same sheet, only Henry's name appears. Yolanda at this point feels that she's coming down with too much shit right now to also take on a conspiracy case. So she does try to leave the Wildcat costume in Courtney's hands and goes home for the night. At her home, Yolanda does find the courage to confront her family about the way they've been treating her. But instead of having a triumphant moment where the family can start healing, they shut her away once again. These bastards care more about their ruined reputation within the community more so than the mental abuse they're causing their daughter. And once again, the moment doesn't follow through with the full implications of what is happening to this girl. She does run up to her room in tears, mind you, but for goodness sake, you would think this would destroy her in a more dramatic way. 3 months of harassment, and when she finally tries to fight back, she is shut down by her family. Now, I fully acknowledge I may not be the person to be speaking on this type of issue. After all, it may be that the writers are trying to show us that the girl is still far more resilient to all this. I understand that. I just don't think that it's portrayed properly. Anyways, she finds the Wildcat costume sitting on her windowsill with a note that says, "I can't do this alone." A very touching message from Stargirl, especially given that Yolanda has been going it alone for 3 months. In the last scene, cut from the CW version, Yolanda throws on the costume and runs to Courtney's window. It's not much, but I do feel I should mention it. Finally, the episode ends with Pat discovering in the junkyard the widow's car, broken and wrecked. This, I believe, is the final kick Pat needed to stoke his fighting spirit, leaving me excited to see what else they've got in store for Pat going forward. Goddamn, what a way to end an episode. I have to say thank you once again for checking out my content. If you have suggestions on how I can improve, go ahead and leave those in the comment section down below. Otherwise, tell me what you thought of the episode. Leave a like to help me out, and subscribe for more Stargirl reviews. It's really starting to get good, but I do have to caution against the teenage superheroing. That part's not so good. It's all with the adults. The villains, and Pat, and Courtney's mother, all of that stuff is just phenomenal, in my opinion, at the very least. Yeah, hopefully that goes for something. Anyways, thank you once again, and I hope you guys all take care. Until next time.